Good morning to you, and I'm glad that you found time to be with us this morning. The show is Good Morning Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and it is a pleasure to have us in board. I'll take us through the headlines very quickly, and then I'll get into a detailed news bulletin, and then after that we shall pick some of the stories to to give a further in-depth analysis. So thank you so much. A very good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and joining us from. We start with the Star newspaper from Kenya. Musalia man to watch as Ruto tweaks roles. That is what we have on the headline. 5 suspects in Chiloba murder detained for 21 days. And then Kenya test alternative malaria drug amid growing resistance. That story is on page 9. And then the Standard newspaper, DP Gachagwa's tough new job. The deputy president, who has been calling for reforms in agriculture so that farmers get guaranteed minimum returns and dismantling of state capture, now has the chance to do exactly that for the valued coffee sector. That story is on page 4 and 5. Raila, I have met Uhuru 3 times to plan Azimio future. You'll find that on page 7. Court orders liquidation of Saiton funds. That is on page 10. And KRA targets 20 billion Kenya shillings capital gains. Very well. The Daily Nation, the main headline, craft roadblock for job seekers. There will be no place for corrupt people in public service at any level. Not only will everybody seek employment in national or county governments get vetted by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, but the agency's recommendation will be binding on employers. That's very interesting, and I'm sure Kenyans have so much to talk about as far as that story is concerned. Now, winners and losers in Ruto's new order. You find that on page 4 and 5. Now, quickly, let's turn our attention to other newspapers from across the region. The New Times, that is from Rwanda. We are going to make sure DR Congo is not Rwanda's problem. That is what Kagame has said there. New Vision from Uganda. I have never met Saleh. That is what Lukwago is saying now. The Daily Monitor. Strike leaves cancer patients in trouble. That is also in Uganda. And then the Sowetan from South Africa. Call the cops if you see this man. Okay. And then we do have a Pretoria News. Mayor briefs partners on a Dunning AG report. That is also from South Africa. The Punch from Nigeria. Cash limits customers protest as banks begin enforcement. The Nation, why Nigerians should vote Tinubu Shetima. That is what Buhari said. The Herald, that is from Zimbabwe. Social media abuse lawyers put on notice. And then the Daily News, also from Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF affiliate Superior nabbed as the fallout over Zimbabwe Electoral Commission's delimitation report escalates. The Citizen from Tanzania. Tanzania SGR hots up raise for regional trade control. That is what we have on some of the regional newspapers from across the continent of Africa. We start our news by going to Nigeria. Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC or INEC, has warned that the general election should be cancelled if nothing is done to tackle insecurity in the country. INEC Chairman Mahmoud Yakubu said the commission was ensuring that election personnel, materials and process have the highest level of protection, especially given the current insecurity challenges in various parts of the country. He said if it was not dealt with decisively, the insecurity could ultimately culminate in the cancellation or postponement of elections in insufficient constituencies to hinder declaration of elections results and precipitate constitutional crisis. He called for strengthening of security outfits to ensure the polls are held successfully across the country. Local media have flagged 15 states likely to experience poll-related violence in the run-up to, during and after the elections. 5 southeastern states, 4 northwestern states, Lagos, Kano, Benue, Plateau, Taraba and Borno states were named as areas likely to witness election-related chaos. And Rwandan President Paul Kagame says his country will no longer offer refuge to people fleeing conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Decades of instability in the east of the country have forced scores of refugees across the border into Rwanda. The presidency has shared Mr. Kagame's remarks in a tweet. He said that the rest of the world had completely missed the point when it came to Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The real threat to insecurity, in his view, is what he describes as the remnants of the Hutu extremist forces who tried to wipe out his Tutsi ethnic group in the 1994 genocide. Rwanda is being accused of backing the M23 rebel group, which the country has always denied. The rebel group has captured areas in recent months, sending tens of thousands of refugees across the border into Rwanda. According to the United Nations Commission for Refugees, in November 2022, Rwanda had some 72,000 Congolese refugees. In a report published in December, UN-mandated experts said they had collected substantial evidence of direct intervention by the Rwandan Defense Forces on the territory of the DRC, at least between November 2021 and October 2022. We head back to Nigeria, and security forces have rescued 6 of the 32 people who were abducted at a train station in Edo State, southern Nigeria, at the weekend, the authorities have confirmed. Among those taken were station staff and passengers waiting for a train. A suspect has also been arrested in connection with the abductions. There have been increasing concerns about attacks in the country. The latest incident comes in the month before the presidential election, where security is a major campaign issue. Reports say that on Saturday, a large number of gunmen armed with AK-47 shot in the air as they entered the station in Igueben before seizing the travelers and staff and taking them to a nearby forest. Some of those who managed to flee sustained bullet wounds. Eyewitnesses have been quoted as saying one woman with a baby also reportedly escaped and found her way to a neighboring community where she was rescued. The federal government has condemned the abduction of the passengers, describing it as despicable and utterly barbaric. Incidents of kidnapping for ransom, as well as gunmen targeting communities for political reasons, have been on the rise in the recent years in Nigeria. And we head over to Ethiopia. Passengers in the capital of northern Ethiopia's Tigray province, Mekelle, have told the BBC that they were restricted from flying to the federal capital, Addis Ababa. The passengers have alleged police at the city airports have barred anyone between the ages of 16 and 64 from boarding flights without explanation unless they're traveling for medical reasons. A federal police spokesperson said he was aware of the allegations, while a senior official at Ethiopian Airways, the national carrier, told the media that the airline does not discriminate against travelers. Ethiopian Airlines, one of Africa's largest airlines, resumed commercial flights to conflict-hit Mekelle last month, following a deal that was reached between the federal government and the Tigrayan fighters to end a 2-year civil war. Much of Tigray has been sealed off from the outside world for more than a year and a half before the deal was agreed in November in South Africa. Basic services, including electricity, phone lines, and flights, are slowly returning to that region. Back to the DRC, and at least 14 people were killed and about 36 others are missing following an attack on a village in the east of DRC. That is according to a local member of parliament. The attackers were armed with machetes when they descended on a village on Sunday in Jugu in Ituri province. A local source speaking under anonymity told the BBC that the killings were linked to rivalries between militia groups operating in the region following the murder of a local teacher on Saturday. An army spokesperson told the BBC that investigators had started investigating the incident in Ituri province has been witnessing fighting between militia groups over ethnic tensions and possession of gold mines. In an interview with UK's ITV News channel, Prince Harry agreed when the interviewer said that he and his brother Prince William had a dispute over Africa. In a highly personal and explosive 90-minute interview, Harry, who now lives in California in the US, agreed with the suggestion that he had a sibling rivalry with his brother, which spilled over into charity work in Africa. The prince conceded that his brother did not want him to get involved in the charity work in Africa because William saw the continent as his thing. In the words of the interviewer, Tom Broadbey, Bradby. William has not commented. It is not the first time Africa has come up in Harry's revelations about the royal family. In yet another explosive series of interviews his Netflix series released with his wife Meghan last year, Harry says that he and Meghan were making plans to move to South Africa until the story was leaked to the press. And China's new Foreign Minister Qin Gang is starting his term with a week-long trip to 5 African countries, the Foreign Ministry announced on Monday. Qin, who until recently was ambassador to the United States, will visit Ethiopia, Gabon, Angola, Benin and Egypt from January 19th to 16th. Spokesperson Wang Wenbin said at a daily media briefing in Egypt, Qin will also meet the Secretary General of the Arab League. The new Foreign Minister is following in the footsteps of his predecessors, who have for more than 3 decades started each year with a trip to Africa. The U.S. is battling China for influence in Africa, with President Joe Biden making an appeal to African leaders at a summit in Washington in December. China has become a major trading partner with the continent and an investor in infrastructure and mining projects. Qin, who is 56, was appointed foreign minister on the 30th of December. He succeeded Wang Yi, who was 69, who has been replaced by Yang Jiechi as the government's top foreign policy official. Wang's new position has now been announced, but a recent article by him on the Foreign Ministry website described him as a director of the ruling Communist Party's Foreign Affairs Office, the Post said. Now, Gabon's President Ali Bongo Ondimba, named on Monday the country's first female vice president, Rose Christiane Osuka Raponda, served until this nomination as prime minister. The 59-year-old is a former mayor of the capital Libreville and Minister of Defense. She fills an office that has been vacant since 2019, making history for a second time. Indeed, in July 2020, she became the country's first female prime minister. The VP's role is to assist the head of state, and the person serving as vice president has no interim role in the event of a power vacuum. Okay. Now, the president named a politician who has since 2006 held several ministerial portfolios. He is now tasked with forming a new government. Gabon is one of the African countries gearing up towards presidential elections this year. In August, millions of voters will head to the polls. The ruling party, the Gabonese Democratic Party, held a congress last year with calls for the head of state to seek a third term. 3 days of talks between Sudan's military and civil leaders continued on Monday, with the aim of reaching a final deal on governing during a two-year transition to elections. Sudan's ruling military has vowed the army will come under civilian authority as the two sides hammer out a final agreement. Spokesman for the civilian side, Khalid Omer Youssef, addressed the media on Monday at a press conference in Khartoum, broadcast by the state-run Sudan News Agency. He said this was an opportunity for all Sudanese to engage and cooperate with the regional and international community to achieve the high national interests of the country. At a launch of the final phase of the political process on Sunday, Sudan's Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan repeated the military's vow to place itself under civilian government. His speech was also broadcasted by the Sudan State News Agency. He said it is the military's conviction that soon there will be a true civilian government established in Sudan, one that will fulfill the aspirations and the ambitions of the Sudanese people towards a free, just and peaceful state. The army chief gave no details on when the military would step aside, but it would keep its word to leave politics. He also applauded efforts by regional and international partners to help end Sudan's political crisis. Al-Burhan overthrew a transitional civilian government led by former Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok in October 2021, citing a lack of attention to alleged threats. The coup came just weeks after the military was to hand over power to civilian authorities, sparking international condemnation and a withdrawal of foreign aid. Sudan's pro-democracy groups have staged nearly weekly protests ever since, demanding the military to step down. Security forces have frequently clashed with the protesters, leaving scores dead. Almost all of them are protesters, and the African Union, the Intergovernmental Authority of Development, IGAD, and the UN, known as the Territorial Mechanism, have been mediating in Sudan with the aim of breaking the deadlock. The talks are expected to include reforming Sudan's security forces. Head over to Somalia now, and the U.S. announced on Sunday that it's giving $9 million in new military aid to help Somalia's ongoing campaign against Al-Shabaab militants. It is the first such direct military support since U.S. forces returned to Somalia, and President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud announced an all-out war against the militants. The U.S. Embassy in Mogadishu handed over military equipment to the government. According to a tweet from the embassy, the weapons and vehicles will support the campaign by the Somali National Army to liberate communities from Al-Shabaab control, according to Abdul Qadir Mohammed Nur, Somali's defense minister. The military donation from the U.S. was a show of confidence and testimony that the Somali military can be trusted to manage weapons without it falling into the wrong hands. He added that the weapons will play an important role in fighting the Kharwaji. Kharwaji is a derogatory term which Somali officials use to describe the Al-Shabaab. And finally, we go to South Sudan, and authorities in Greater Pibor are calling on the national government and the government of Ethiopia to intervene in the ongoing clashes in Lekoi Gole area, according to the Information Minister of Greater Pibor. The clashes, which flared over the weekend, were carried out by armed youth believed to have crossed into the country from Ethiopia. The fighting reportedly resulted in 23 people dead, including 3 women and an infant, and wounding 14 others. Ministers Abraham Kelang Gigi said some of the casualties were found with Ethiopian national identity cards. He called on the two governments to intervene in the conflict. Both Ethiopian government and the South Sudan governments are yet to comment on the matter. Last month, armed raiders from Jonglei State attacked Gomuruk County of Pibor, leading to deadly fighting with the local youth. Pibor authorities said 56 people were killed, dozens were injured, and around 30,000 people have since been displaced. And you are now up to date. A very good morning to you. Okay, I'm joined now by Wanda Wesonga, our in-house analyst from Nairobi. Wanda Wesonga, very good morning to you, and nice to have you on the show this morning.
Good morning to you, Miriam. I'm happy to see you this morning.
All right, so I know you were just listening very patiently there. We have so much to talk about, and that is all we're going to do this morning. We're going to look at these news items that I just concluded with. So let's just start with that news from Somalia, where the U.S. has given some military aid to Somalia. Yesterday, here in the afternoon show, I was looking at a story on Somalia. And remember that attack that happened in November in a very guarded hotel? I think we had that conversation here. And one of our panelists who had a good understanding about that area, she's from Somalia, told us that nobody can really access to that hotel and that area because it's near Villa Somalia. It's a very high guarded place. So there are possibilities that there are some elements within the national security that might have cooperated with the Al-Shabaab militants to enable them carry out these attacks. So over the weekend, I think during the handing over of this military aid, the Prime Minister said that all the security officers who were in charge that day were arrested and they're being interrogated. And also, I think that's what they said. And also the Deputy Defense Minister of Somalia, I think he came out to say that he was misquoted, but I don't think he was misquoted because he had said that the government somehow is engaging with talks with Al-Shabaab. So it was a bit confusing, all this information. And so they're saying that for the U.S. now, from this news item, because the U.S. is giving them this military aid, that means that the U.S. has trust for the Somali military can be trusted to manage the weapons without it falling into the wrong hands. That is quite telling. Why would anybody say that? And what is your opinion in all these things in regards to Somali, Al-Shabaab and its security?
The year ended on a beautiful note from my side that I was happy to see that Somalia probably was finally getting to a nation that was once stable in the early 1960s and a bit mid-1960s. Now, when you look into the U.S. giving them the military aid, then I look at it in the sense that why should they give them aids instead of doing away with the arms embargo of 1992? If I'm told they now have trust in the military and the military of Somalia, the way they conduct themselves and their abilities to deal with the Al-Shabaab or the militia in Somalia, why should they then give them the aids and not just do away the arms embargo so that they are now able to strengthen their military so that going forward in future, the military is stable? Because doing that to me, it's like giving somebody a fish and not showing them how to fish. You give someone the aids. What about, so in this case, this person is living because you are there. If you decide to celebrate so much of the US aid, but instead I wish that instead of it, then the arms embargo is done away with, so that the country starts strengthening its military. It's it's military. Medium.
And thank you for reminding us the military embargo does exist against Somalia, South Sudan, and of course, when a country is conflict-ridden and there's instability, that is something that the UN is normally very quick to move and put in place to ensure that no more arms are able to be brought in the country. But US is violating this. Are they not violating this arms embargo? If you're taking a military aid, I'm sure it is in form of arms are part of that aid, military aid. This is military aid. So there's very good question. Why can't they just lift up the arms embargo? And why would US violate this arms embargo by the United Nations that has been placed on Somalia? Very interesting.
Indeed, like you can imagine, why is this arms embargo there? What is the purpose of it being there? If I'm told a different nation, in this case a superpower nation, a nation with veto powers, can go ahead and breach the terms of the arms embargo itself. And it is the reason why I don't see any point of even the Somalians celebrating this, because they're being made to live. To live on the terms. The military is now, it's surviving at the terms, at the mercies of the USA. And if USA can do such a thing, then let them negotiate on doing away with the arms embargo, so that they either give them funds or they only help them to equip their military, but not that we are giving you as an aid, but you cannot go ahead and buy on your own. You cannot budget on your own. You cannot. To me, it's not okay. Like, if someone is telling you, I can only give you, I can only give you a loaf of bread, but I cannot give you money to go and budget how many pieces, how many loaves of bread do you want in your house? And therefore, in this case, it means when that one loaf of bread is gone, then you have nothing to feed on, and therefore, we should be, or the USA should be talking about now lifting the arms embargo, not giving them the military aids. That is breaking the terms of the arms embargo that is there. And if I'm told it can be broken, then let it be done away with.
Okay, I hear you. All right, Wanda, let's just leave that matter for right now and go to Sudan, where the military leaders have reiterated their position that they're working towards restoring a civilian rule. Remember, after the ousting of President Omar al-Bashir in 2019, I think it was in April, and then in August, there was an agreement between the military side and the civilian side. They formed a transitional government, and this was supposed to be in place for 3 years as the country readies to have a new constitution. After the ousting of President Omar al-Bashir, the constitution was suspended, and the country was supposed to have an election after the transition period was over, after 3 years, so that they're able to go back to a civilian rule. But just towards when the transitional government period was about to elapse, we saw the coup happen when the former Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok was removed from power, and the military caused a situation there, I think. Now when I just look back at it, and I think we talked about it here, maybe you're not there yet when we're having this conversation, they sort of created a crisis that could not really create an environment where an election would be held. So now I think they have they have extended again the transitional period, I guess, for the next 2 years, because they're supposed again to be having elections later on this year, but I doubt that will happen. So now there is a caveat to that. After that coup that removed the Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, there was international condemnation and, of course, withdrawal of aid from Sudan. So do you feel they're feeling the pinch of the withdrawal from the aid? So now these are just games they're trying to play around, I think, in the international system, and to pretend as if they are getting ready for a civilian transition. Because from where I sit and from how I look at things, the military in Sudan is not ready to hand over power. Remember, they were in power all the time, all the 30 years former President Omar al-Bashir was in power. Sudan was a militarized country. He ruled by the military. Military ran key parastatals in Sudan. Military ran key businesses in Sudan. So military is Sudan and Sudan is military. So you can't separate them like that. So I don't see them just marching back to the barracks like that. It's not going to be an easy task. So are they serious about really working on having a transition, or is just they're feeling the bites of this withdrawal of the foreign aid, so they're just trying to appease the international community to see if at all they can have that aid back?
As you put it, they're being hypocritical. And based on the African, very few African will get to positions of leadership at such, such high level of leadership, then just walk out from such positions. What South Sudanese, what Sudan's military could be doing, one, at times these aids do not pinch them so much, especially those that are in power. Because, the persons who normally feel the pinch, they are the citizens in most cases. What at times happens to them is the image that I don't know. You'll be put on a no-go zone to a certain place. You'll not be allowed to enter certain, and that imaging alone is the one that is at times tainted. Then one that they will always want to re-image themselves to appease the world that we are not as bad as you people think. We are able to make things work. But down, when you look at it keenly, when you analyze the details, pressures that comes with AIDS do not affect them so much. When you look at countries like South Sudan, when you look at countries like Zimbabwe, all these countries that have had sanctions, the leadership that has been sanctioned has never tore down, has never stepped down, has never done anything different. In the sense that they're afraid that the AIDS are affecting them. To them, life is okay. What they only fear so much is the international image and the businesses international-wise, as individuals, as a group of few persons. Mm-hmm. Therefore, what Sudan government, military is doing with trying to tell us that they now want to hand over to the civilian, they want to negotiate, they want to see things work. Probably it's just a case of an international image, but the very civilians will still be the very military persons. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it will be just a case of let the international body know that the civilian are now taking over, but actually it will be the military. When you look at probably a country like Zimbabwe, they'll tell us, I don't know, the military is not there, Mnangagwa, but they are still the same military persons that you are picked from the military. You are now asked to retire, then you're given such positions. And therefore, it is just the same military guys. Mm-hmm. What these guys are doing is to look at, to try and rebrand their international image as individuals so that they are not hurt mm-hmm. by the actions that they are doing, but not a case of, being interested, looking into the aids or an interest of letting go of the leadership. Mm-hmm. As you put it, nobody will let go of such positions in Africa easily.
Mm-hmm. And You know, you brought up a very interesting issue of the international image, and that is perhaps what they're trying to do a public relations exercise and a cleanup exercise to try to sanitize whatever it is that is going on in Sudan, because we know Sudan had been the countries had been put in the blacklist since the 90s after it was discovered Osama bin Laden. They had given Omar had given him a safe haven in Sudan in the early 90s. So since then, Sudan was in the list of blacklisted countries around the world that are said to be sponsoring a terrorist. So that meant until I think the ousting of Omar al-Bashir and just towards Trump leaving his presidency, I think he removed Sudan from that list. And so that blacklisting came with a hefty price tag, because that means investors from certain countries could not come in and do business in Sudan. So Sudan heavily relied in doing business and help from these Middle Eastern, from the Gulf countries, if I might put it like that. And so the Gulf countries have been pulling and pushing and having the strings up there in Sudan. They've been having their agendas, sorry, there in Sudan. But now Sudan, I think, realizes, and to some extent, perhaps some of these countries have abandoned them. I don't know if that is the truth. So they realize it is important for them to join back, especially after that blacklist. They were removed from the blacklist to go back to the international community. But there are some norms that they have to adhere to, and they don't seem to be stepping up to these norms according to the international system. So they're finding it very difficult. And something else, Omar al-Bashir is still wanted by the International Criminal Court. Mm-hmm. And Karim Khan has set up shop in Sudan, and he wants to start investigating afresh the killings in Darfur. And a lot of the people who are involved, and that is why Omar al-Bashir has a warrant of arrest over his head over the killings that happened in Darfur. These top generals were involved, were part and parcel of that regime, might have given orders even. In fact, the second in command is the head of the deadly Janjaweed. They now call it the Sudan Rapid Force, but the deadly Janjaweed that committed these atrocities in Darfur. So as much as they're trying to this cleanup exercise to try to repair their image, but there's still a dark cloud looming over their heads. I don't know to what extent and to what concessions they're willing to make, really, to properly do this cleanup. Do you think they will agree to take Omar al-Bashir to the ICC? Because that means they'll have to go there. At this point, Omar al-Bashir has nothing to lose, really, so you just go out there and start naming names. Is that something they're willing to give up?
I really doubt if they will hand over Bashir, because as you're saying, Bashir will go and create a big list, because he was doing this with the support of other persons. And this, then we are not been told about them. And when Bashir is handed over to ICC, then we'll start having another list coming up. And chances are Bashir will be having enough evidence that will hold these persons culpable, or will confirm them not innocent, but indeed they will be guilty at this. Will be guilty. And therefore, it's very hard that these guys, hands over al-Bashir to ICC. Mm-hmm. Because it would be equal to handing themselves in. Doubt if they will do, because yet they were under some serious senior person's command, and the commanders that commanded people to do all these things, we are yet to have them listed as persons of interest in ICC. And therefore, if Bashir is taken to ICC, the very persons will now be persons of interest. Then chances are they will be arrested, and they are not ready to spend their life in ICC. Mm-hmm.
And should a civilian government come in, I think they'll be working towards perhaps cooperating with the ICC. So from where I sit, and all factors remaining constant, I don't see a transition to a civilian rule anytime soon. I think the military side feels like they have so much to lose should they hand over power to a civilian government. And if what we've been seeing is true, Omar al-Bashir being held in a cage, I don't know what conditions he's living in jail because he's already serving time over some corruption and other things that he has already been indicted in Sudan. Then I think ICC, from what we've been seeing, will be a better place for him. I think he'll be more comfortable there. I don't know. But anyway, let's move on to another news item. And China's new foreign minister, Qin Gang, is starting his term with a week-long trip to African countries. The foreign ministry has announced Qin, who until recently was ambassador to the United States, very interesting, will visit Ethiopia, Gabon, Angola, Benin, and Egypt from the 9th to the 16th. The spokesperson in his office has said. In Egypt, Qin will also meet the Secretary General of the Arab League. That is it's quite interesting. I mean, this visit was expected, especially after coming on the backdrop of that Africa Leaders US Summit that happened between the 13th and the 15th of December last year. The visit was expected, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, in fact, although from where I sit as we discussed this as Africans, African television, but from where I sit now, when the patriotism now comes in and I pick a national bit of it, as a Kenyan, I sit down a bit a worried person that when they decide or when the foreign minister decides to pick Ethiopia in the region, the Great Lakes region, then it tells me that they're having a feeling that in this region now, a country of interest is Ethiopia. If we want to win the region, if we want to probably do some serious business within the region, then let us now go to Ethiopia. Chances are we have now lost Kenya. So to me, I'd be now interested to know where is Kenya, where is now Kenya heading to and where we are heading to. Are we going to RIP or are we going just to get in for the sake of being in? Number two, I look at this visit, then I look at the USA appointing of the John Carson. Then I look at the Russian interest in Africa. Then in all this, I feel like still there is a tussle, there is a struggle on who controls or who wins the hearts of Africans. That when you look at the history of John Carson, he has been an ambassador in countries like Kenya, countries like, I think, Zimbabwe, countries like Uganda. He has equally had some assignments in Africa, quite a number of them. And during the reign of Barack Obama ended up using the same person to help him probably transact or do some businesses with Africa. And therefore, when this person comes in, I feel like Joe Biden was equally advised by Barack Obama to consider the John Carson if I'm told you want to win Africa. Now, therefore, when I look at John Carson being appointed and given an assignment to an African continent, then we're having a new foreign minister in China, and equally the very first assignments is getting into Africa. We have had Russia with interest in Africa. It all tells us that Africa is being preyed by a number of, by the rest of the world, the East, the West, individual or specific nations. Therefore, it is a high time that African leadership, either under the African Union, now sits down and strategizes on how do we bargain now as a continent? Because if we let go of these chances, then it means we'll end up striking deals that are not okay, striking deals that will not favor the interests of the continent. Because we are now in the market, and every person is interested to get this, to own or to buy this product. And buying this product in these cases, striking business relationships or striking a relationship with Africa. Therefore, if the leadership of Africa look at it on a positive end, then strategize on how to bargain and win or come up with a win-win situation, then probably going forward, the Africa will win. Chances are this is now the time when they should be able to negotiate or renegotiate the terms of these loans, because every person now that we are indebted to is interested in Africa. They are all running to win Africa. Then let our leadership, the regional, the continent leadership realize or come to a realization that there is something that the rest of the world wants in Africa. And if they are all interested in Africa, then as a continent, we have a chance of negotiating any other thing or negotiating any other thing that we feel like it is a pressure on us. Then we probably start or chart a new way forward going forward.
Okay, very well. Thank you. So we are the bride now. So whoever who is wooing us, we must increase our premium, I suggest. But something else that really caught my attention in this story, that while this new foreign minister from China will be visiting Egypt, he wants to have a meeting with the Secretary General of the Arab League. Now, the reason why I bring this up and why I find it to be very interesting is we know the history of China, and there's these Uyghur Muslims in China that has been allegations that the government of China is targeting them. Matter of fact, they've created these institutions where they take them there, they try to change their way of life and religion and things like that, and even their dressing. The government of China, and it's no secret, I think this information is out there, the Uyghur Muslims, and we've seen how they've treated them. And we've seen how the Arab League has taken issues, especially, say, something to do with Palestine and its what they term as oppression by the occupation by Israel in their land, and the very stance that the Arab League and other Muslim countries have taken in support of Palestine against what Israel is doing in Palestine. So in that regard, they've not been able to have ties with Israel. In fact, it's just the other day that now Israel is able to talk to Egypt from a few months ago, and perhaps it's beginning to have ties with is it Algeria or Morocco, that also brought a problem between those two countries. I think Morocco, and things like that. So, but they have been supportive of Palestine because they feel this is their Muslim brothers and sisters. Of course, there's another population of Christians in there, but that is a conversation for another time. And so they have been in support of that. But China is really discriminating from the reports that we've been seeing coming out from China against this Muslim community, the Uyghurs. So why would a meeting by the Arab League Secretary General happen? Why can they not stand up against China? Why are they allowing this? Or they just pick and choose who to associate with?
I think it's more of the economy and realignments, because what we have experienced in the recent past, and especially when the Russia-Ukraine war took a serious shape, or when things were now bad, the economy being hit, we had quite a lot of realignments of countries trying to mend their ways. Probably if we had a country that we are not working with, or a region we are not in good terms with, we try and make peace with them. Chances are they are the ones that we'll be able to work with going forward. And therefore, it could be, it could be more of an economic approach, which in this case now, the religious approach, the religious bit will now be discussed, because we cannot be addressing the economy and forget about the social aspect. But I think from where I sit, I feel like it's more of an economy and it's more of a realignment based on quite a number of nations are losing their allies, their business partners. And in this case, they have to identify new business partners. And Egypt still stands a very important nation. When we talk of that is the Arabic part of it, or the Arab bit of it. Therefore, to me, it is not even the religious part, though it must be discussed. but it is a case of realignment in terms of picking new business partners.
Okay. All right. I just thought that was quite interesting based on their decisions that you've made in the past, this Arab League. Okay. So this interview that Prince Harry, of course, he has a new book coming out. He had that documentary series on Netflix, so he is promoting this new book. So he's been doing a series of interviews, and honestly, I'm really not into too much of this, but what really caught my attention in one of those interviews that he was doing with one of the UK's news channel there, when he said that him and his brother William, they had an issue and a dispute over Africa. As an African already, my antenna was up. I'm thinking, what days, which century are we at, that some princess, some very, some two princes from the UK would have a dispute over Africa. Just the audacity of that already. Anyway, in a highly personal and explosive 90-minute interview, Harry, now who lives in California, agreed with the suggestion that he had a sibling rivalry with his sibling, which spilled over into charity work in Africa. So Harry has sort of taken after his mom, Diana, who we knew had a lot of charity work, used to do, especially in the Southern Africa and even in countries like Zimbabwe and Malawi and things like that. And she was involved, I think those days HIV and AIDS was an actual thing, and she broke protocol in even embracing these people those days, which was considered a taboo. And Harry seems to have taken over this charity work like his mother. So Prince William conceded that Harry conceded that his brother William did not want him to get too involved in charity work in Africa because William saw the continent as his thing. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about that.
Although it's funny indeed, but from where I sit and from the point of view of, based on what I see in this, if it will ever come to a point that Prince William, based on the hereditary hierarchy, that he takes over the royalty of that is the Great Britain, that will mark the end of the royalty in UK. Because one, Prince Harry has already, he's already painting his brother, and he's already telling the rest of the world and the continent that this guy is a racist. And therefore, once this guy is bestowed as now the king of, that is the king, any person that has an interest with people of color and any other person of color will not embrace King William at that point. Therefore, it could be, if it will one day happen that he gets to that position, elevated to that position, then he'll have it very rough and very hard to lead that region. Number one, even the persons within that Great Britain, any person of color or any person who has, associated with people of color will not embrace him. The rest of the continent will not embrace him. The rest of the world will not embrace him for as long as the rest, these people are, are of color, or they are people of interest with people of color. And if indeed Prince William is a racist, then and even the fact that they can discuss Africa and look at Africa as a personal property, it should as well be a wake-up call to Africans on how they even transact businesses or do businesses with the very kingdom or with the UK. Because you're already telling us that we are your pet. And if we are your pet, then you do to the pet what you want. In this case, if you're doing, if you're doing business with this pet of yours, then you give it the peanuts or the leftovers. Therefore, it means they are not even sincere working with us. So chances are we need to, the continent should look into the words, the statements being used by Prince Harry. They then use the very statements to demand some answers from them.
Okay.
Miriam.
So from what you're saying is that the credibility of Prince William, and at some point he was really loved, and some Britons were feeling they'd rather keep before the Queen died, they'd rather keep the king now and just go straight to William. Of course, that could not happen in the hierarchical system of the monarchy. And so his dad is the king now, but this has really damaged his credibility. Do you think the world will look at him the same?
Not really. In fact, the world is now looking at the father as a weak father. The world is looking at the son, who is William, as a racist, as a person who cannot unite the world, as a person who cannot unite people. Therefore, if he's elevated and get to such a position of being a king, he'll regret he'll regret what the brother is doing right now.
Okay. All right. Very well. I'm not a monarchist. I think I've always had a problem with the psychology of the monarchist, with the psychology of Commonwealth, with what it stands for and the history behind it, and the people who really got hurt while Britain was building its empire, and the fact that the colonialism that they really had in this continent is not something that is taught in Britain syllabus. You can't find it anywhere. It's not there. So I've had a problem with that, and I always struggle to understand why even we have something like Commonwealth, and why even my very wonderful country would think that it's a good idea to still be in Commonwealth, because these are former colonies of the British Empire, and of course a few others like Rwanda, and I think another one who applied to join the Commonwealth, which I don't understand, but I struggle to make sense of some of these things. And I think the British Empire and even the monarchy itself, I think it is a classist institution. You have the House of Lords, and then you have the House of Commons. Already it has introduced a class struggle in the sense that we're not all equal, as we are somewhere up there, and then the rest of you are just the commoners down there. And so because of that, now we have someone, I don't know the age of Prince William, sitting there and thinking that a whole continent with over 1.2 billion people is his thing. I feel insulted, and if this is true, I think there should be, our leaders should speak about this. I think the more I talk about it, I think I might start catching some feelings about it. So let me just leave it alone and move on, but I feel quite insulted. So hopefully, African Union, Mohamed Faki, you say something about that, how we are still subject to the British Empire. I don't understand that. Anyway, this story about Tigray, that also I think is quite worrying. As much as we know the mediation went on there in Ethiopia and things seems to be falling back in place, and a couple of basic services have returned to the Tigray region, electricity, phone lines, flights, and all that slowly. But this new report about passengers in the capital of the northern Tigray's capital in Mekelle being denied right to take a flight to come into the capital, Addis Ababa, they're saying that people aged between 16 and 64 are being denied, are being stopped from boarding flights without explanation. But unless they're traveling for medical reasons. I think this is what also happens in Eritrea. Eritrea, there's a certain age that they refuse for you to leave Eritrea unless you have a very good reason to leave the country, actually. So if this is true, anyone between the ages of 16 and 64 is being barred, allegedly, from boarding flights without explanation. Is there more to what we are seeing, or we are not being told in Ethiopia, or this mediation process is just going on just fine?
I think on security reasons and the military reasons, they could be right doing that, because we have those people who are of the idea that some persons are supposed to be held accountable Some person are supposed to be in prison today. Some person are even supposed to be hanged. And all those, there are persons of that opinion that are looking at it in that view. That we'll have those, and in this case, you don't know how many are these, and you don't know who are these. And therefore, if you allow these people just to move freely without a candid explanation or a serious reason on what they're going to do, when you are still in the early stages of, realizing peace and finally calling each other brothers, sisters, doing businesses together, and all those things, it's just a case of being cautious. And probably they only need to have explained it. But from where I sit, I feel like it's not bad. In the sense that we still have people of the opinion that these people messed us up. These people killed our own people. They destroyed our properties. If you just allow them to move freely, it can result into what Adolf Hitler did. Adolf Hitler did not just sit back and feel like it's okay, the World War I is gone, we're having the reparations on us, okay, let's just move on and realize peace the rest of the world. Hitler carried the pain and the need to revenge. And he started organizing himself, planning and doing everything possible so that he will organize a serious revenge. And indeed, 1939, Hitler decided and starts a revenge. So they're only being cautious. Only that they ought to have explained this one as a way, as a process of healing and as a process of ensuring that after a certain period now, we'll be able to, we'll calm down, analyze everything and feel like now we are okay. Our people can easily mingle and do businesses and live together peacefully. But it's very early to have them move freely because it can result into, or rather we can have people with an interest to revenge.
And just boarding your train of thought there, Wanda, something that you brought up, very interesting, taking us back to history, Hitler and after the World War I and what happened and, the losses that Germany was forced to suffer after they signed that treaty that did not sit very well. And then when Hitler came to power, he went on a mission. He wanted to recapture everything that, the territories and all that, that Germany had suffered after the World War I, and that triggered the World War II. And what from is just pegging the conversation from there, that means it will just take us back to something that we've been talking about here. As much as there has been a mediation process and the war has stopped, but there something that has to take place called accountability. And for the country to heal and for people to truly reconcile, you can't skip these steps. There has to be some level of accountability where the government and these other forces and every other actors that were involved in this conflict must sit down and say, hey, lives were lost, people died, properties were destroyed, this and this happened, a section of the community is still suffering from trauma. So we need to address these things so that we're able to fully heal. So if from this story and from what you're saying, I said I'm boarding your thought process this morning, is actually the case, and the government of Ethiopia could be suspicious of anybody leaving that region coming to Addis Ababa, then that means we really need to dig into the issues and look at the behind the scenes factors and some of the things that actually even caused this conflict so that the country is able to truly reconcile with itself. So the issue of accountability is still very important. That is what I'm hearing you to be saying.
It is very important. The only thing from what we experienced in Ethiopia, that is their government and the Tigray, is that very senior persons might have been involved in this, very senior persons. And these very senior persons from either quarters, they're either afraid or they're either those that we defined as the untouchable. They have a say in the society. if at times, I know it's very important that that accountability is addressed, that people are held accountable. But when you look into the nature of this conflict that we had in Ethiopia, chances are very senior persons were involved in this. And when these senior persons will be brought on, asked to answer some questions, be held accountable and all those things, chances are we'll start having stories of ICC. Chances are we'll have a number of leaders being driven to that end. And the support that they have, the other quarter, I feel like our leader is being targeted or is being punished because of you guys. Then we might have another war again. Therefore, that's the only thing that I fear in this case, that when you look at the nature of that conflict, very senior persons might have been involved. And the nature of our person is being targeted, our leader is being targeted, our community is being targeted, might work again. Then we might end up again with a square zero. People will again start fighting. The same case that we have always had in Kenya. When a leader is held accountable, then their persons or that community will start branding it as a community issue, not looking at an individual and what they did, but they look at it in the sense that we are being targeted as a community. So if we'll have few individuals being held accountable on what they commit or the role that they played in the Ethiopia-Tigray conflict, we'll have those that are likely to start singing our leader is being targeted, our person is being targeted. And in so doing, we might have some other quarter of their supporters again getting into another conflict. So I don't know how this accountability will be addressed so that we still address it, so that all quarters are now okay and at peace. Then we move forward without looking at it and painting it as our person being targeted.
But there's no easy way out on this. Accountability means accountability, and that means that some people must be accountable. And at this point, the buck stops to the head of the country, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and perhaps the leadership of the TPLF and other people who are involved. So if you are truly looking for accountability, then accountability is accountability. I don't know if there are ways around it that now we must come and have an open talk like the way they did with the courts in Rwanda, and then we gloss over issues. I think that might be one of the things that will happen. People will just come and confess, or people will just come and talk their issues out. At the end of the day, they'll be open and candid about it, so that they decide, do we punish them or do we forgive or move on? But accountability has to be accountability. So whichever way they choose to do it, but that is something that must happen so that these underlying factors are able to be addressed and arrested in good time, so that he doesn't morph and we sit here, we thought a mediation process was successful and they've only postponed an even bigger conflict that might explode in the future because certain factors and certain issues were never addressed fully. That's all we're trying to say this morning, right, Wanda? That's all we're saying. Do properly what is supposed to be done so that they can move on as Rwanda did. South Africa, they didn't do that very well. I think after apartheid, that's why you see them acting the way they're acting there with the xenophobia and all this other ugliness we see sometimes flare out in South Africa. There are people who are still traumatized. There are people who are still have never really feel as if justice was done. So you don't want a part of your citizen having this feeling of an injustice. And you brought in the issue of Kenya. We still have people here who suffered after 2007, 2008 post-election violence, and even people who suffered during the 1992 clashes, and people who have lived through these traumas. When you find a person who actually was affected and they tell you their story, then you will know that people have not healed and people have not moved on. It is great, we want to sit here and say we learned from our mistakes in the past, but there are people who are still suffering, so you never know with these wounds. Anytime they can be triggered, anytime, So I think if we are seeking for healing and reconciliation, then it has to be honest and it has to be fully and totally. And we can't choose and pick how. And this should be done. It should be done in a way that everybody feels like justice has been done, or at least they've been heard. That also goes a long way, right? Okay. So another problem that has refused to go away, and the Rwandan president lately has been very candid in how he's been expressing himself about this issue in the Democratic Republic of Congo, maybe because every other person is accusing him and his country. So now, Rwandan President Paul Kagame has threatened to evict thousands of Congolese refugees living in Rwanda if the international community continues to blame his country for the conflict in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Speaking on Monday from the capital Kigali after swearing in ceremony of Rwanda's new Senate President Francois Xavier Kalinda, Kagame said, "We cannot," I'm quoting him, "we cannot keep being host to refugees for which we are later to held accountable in some way or even abused about. Refugees as a result of ethnic cleansing based in another country, and we must be a dumping ground of those people who are being deprived of their right." Kagame switched from the national Kinyarwanda language to English to deliver his message, as he often does when he wants to talk about the international community. This is what he said: "We are really prepared to be blamed, but we will be blamed for doing what we must do," Kagame said in an address punctuated by clapping and applause from members of Rwandan parliament. Now, the Congolese government have, and a recent UN report blamed Rwanda for supporting the M23, mostly Tutsi rebel movement fighting in the east of the country against the Congo government. Rwanda has consistently denied the accusation, saying it is Congo's internal issue. The M23 rebel movement, which claims to fight against persecution of Congolese of Tutsi origin, seems to have fueled even more hatred against them from the other ethnic groups in several parts of Congo. And for weeks, thousands have been fleeing into Rwanda and Uganda, including hundreds who crossed into Rwanda last week. So the ones who are actually fleeing from DRC are the Tutsis, the Congolese Tutsis who are fleeing now into Rwanda, majority of them, the refugees, into Rwanda and Uganda. And according to the Rwanda Ministry of Emergency Services, at least 60% of Rwandan refugee population is Congolese. Since August last year, some East African Community member states, including Burundi and Kenya, have deployed their forces in the region to help end the conflict, but progress has been slow. And according to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, in November 2022, Rwanda had some 72,000 refugees. Now, in a report in December, a UN-mandated expert say they had collected substantial evidence of direct intervention by the Rwandan defense forces on the territory of the DRC, at least between November 2021 and October 2022, and these reports have been numerous. So at this point, I think Rwanda has to just, I don't acknowledge or what will happen, but Kagame is saying that his country is no longer willing to receive any more refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I was listening to President Paul Kagame. Then, for the very first time in the Congo conflict, I felt like I should side by him. I'm not siding by him in the sense of, supporting the M23 or not really. I'm looking at it with this question of the refugees in DRC. That indeed it is true that so many persons, and even now today, the rest of the world is now pointing a finger at Paul Kagame as a person of interest with what's happening in DRC Congo with the M23, supporting the M23. Now, that alone means that is being told you are the reasons why we are having the refugees from DRC Congo getting to Rwanda, of which he has always insisted and stood on the ground that I'm not supporting M23. Now, when I look at this, like you're blaming someone to be the reason why we're having the refugees, then you're allowing the very refugees to go and stay in one room in the house of this person. Like, how do you now want this person to react? Like, you're telling this person, you're the reason these people have lost a house. Then you're telling these persons that have lost a house, now you can go ahead and stay in in one of his rooms. Then you don't want the owner of this house to talk about these new visitors that are coming in. That as he walks out the house, as these visitors are in one of the room, these visitors are being told the owner of this house that is walking out is the reason your house was burnt down. The owner of this house is the reason why your people are being killed or your people are killed. So to me, I feel like this is too much pressure on him. That if they want to have these refugees well treated and everything settled out, then they should not just point a finger at one end, but they should be able to have a serious discussion that is sincere, then try to find a solution to it. The only thing that I will not, that I will wish as now as a humanity, based on the humanity point of view, is that some of these refugees are very innocent. A good number of them are very innocent. Some of them are children that have lost their parents in the process. If all these team are pushed out, then asked to go back to the war zones, then it means we are going to further lose very innocent lives. So I wish that all the parties sit down and have a serious discussion on how to take care of these refugees, so that we don't have innocent children being punished innocently. If President Kagame can probably listen to this show today, then he should consider these innocent children as much as they're having serious battles, serious push and pull, being pointed a finger at, being blamed, and all those things. He should approach it as now as a father, as a parent. Then imagine that this conflict, we are having people that are losing lives. And some of the refugees that are in his country are very innocent children that are now orphans. If they are pushed out and go back to to DRC Congo and the eastern part of it that is always in chaos and fighting, then these children are going to completely lose everything. They'll either be killed in the process, very innocent kids that probably have a future that probably will be able to help both the DRC and the Rwanda will, in this case, have their future terminated. Therefore, let him and the rest of the world approach it as leaders and not affect the innocents, because they will end up hurting so many people.
And should President Kagame carry out this threat, then he will be contravening the United Nations 1951 Refugee Convention that states that the 1959 Refugee Convention and its 1967 Protocol are the key legal documents that form the basis of this convention, with 149 states parties to it. Now, the core principle is non-refoulement, which asserts that a refugee should not be returned to a country where they face serious threats to their life or freedom. This is now considered a rule of customary international law. So as long as they've come to that border and they want to enter Rwanda, Rwanda has no right to return them to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees serves as the guardian of the 1951 Convention and its 1967 Protocol, and according to the legislation, states are expected to cooperate with this body in ensuring that rights of refugees are respected and protected. And Section D of this convention on international cooperation in the field of asylum and resettlement says the conference, considering that many persons still leave their country of origin for reasons of persecution and are entitled to special protection on account of their position, recommends that the governments where these refugees go to continue to receive refugees in their territories, and that they act in concert in a true spirit of international cooperation in order that these refugees may find asylum and the possibility of resettlement. So do you envisage a space where Kagame might actually contravene this 1951 Refugee Convention together with its 1967 Protocol?
Yes. Kagame is a soft-spoken but very principled person. And what Kagame tells you, chances are he will do exactly that. Therefore, he might end up doing what he's telling the world. Unless people take him serious, when he tells the rest of the world that he is ready to be blamed on a cause that he believes in, then Kagame is ready to do it.
Now, what I find to be very interesting when I was just going through this story and what is at stake here, it is at the same time that Rwanda agreed, after having paid by Britain, to receive more refugees that are coming from Britain, that are going to Britain, and so Britain is taking them and repatriating back to Rwanda for some safe havens there. So how can now Rwanda tell us they don't have space to receive any more refugees, and yet it is preparing to receive more refugees from Britain, of course, after being paid?
I think it's still the economic realignments that Paul Kagame has never had a conflict, and especially outside there. We have always been talking about Kagame, either blaming him, but we have had some quarters not blaming him directly. But of the recent past, they are now blaming him, probably, which could mean they are now not ready to work with him. They have probably identified a new partner, and they're now pushing aside this former partner. And now the former partner is not okay with being pushed aside, and to this it is a case of to hell with the arrangements that we ever had. I'm going to also to stand my ground, because you're pushing me. I'll not just be pushed. I'll also resist being pushed. Therefore, it could be a case of the economic realignments, picking new business partners, and him either losing a partner. In this case, he doesn't care now what the former meant.
And I think that is where we come to the end of our show this morning, the extended version of Good Morning Africa. It's about 21 minutes past noon here, way past morning. In Nairobi is African time. I want to thank you so much, Wanda Wesonga, for your time on the show this morning and this afternoon. So Dr. Day was not able to be with us, but he shall be with us in our subsequent shows. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you here much later with more conversation about Africa at 3 p.m. East African time. So a purpose to join me then. My name is Miriam Ogutu. It has been a pleasure. Bye-bye.